There it is.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Good.
dude. Look at you. You said you were nervous, and then you were like, "All right, let's get this thing rolling."
Yeah, well, I just needed a warm up 15-minute conversation.
You adapt quick, bro.
You
That's
gotta warm up. If you don't warm up, that's when bad things happen, right?
adapting is the key to survival.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Adapt.
no shit. But going off of what we were talking about, I mean, I feel like these are somewhat old subjects, but yet but still very relevant. You were talking about like where were we?
So
Yeah.
you were telling me how when you're at work, you would just
Oh,
get the clickbait, and I was starting to say that I hadn't watched the mainstream news, and it was a couple weeks ago. I was at my in-laws, and they were watching like MSNBC or one of them, you know, uh, popular news channels. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to actually sit down on the couch and see what they have to say. And the thing that was weird was like, they were both like really excited about what was going to be talked about. And it was something about like what Trump had said about DeSantis. And literally, it was to me, it was not news at all. And it was the most unexciting story. And I was just like, wow, like they just hyped this up. And it was literally not about anything other than just like
oh,
a tweet. I don't know, but it just blew my mind. I was like, you know what? This is why I don't watch the news, because all it is just them just selling stories that aren't even real stories. It's just,
dude,
propaganda.
the world's just becoming so fake.
Yeah.
Like it's just like I mean, it's always been pretty fake, but like it's just becoming easier to become a fake person. Think about it. Like an influencer just has a constant image to show. It's not too you can I mean, real recognizes real. So you and I could probably identify like the people are like, I bet that person's just like that on and off their show.
Yeah.
But then you can definitely tell like how many people put on this like facade, but it's kind of sad too because like we're talking about clickbait and like headlines and news and how it grabs people's attention. But you know what's sad is nowadays, like with like uh YouTube and the internet and stuff, bro, you have so many things literally at your fingertips, so many options and avenues to go learn something
Yeah.
valuable. If you
Yeah.
want to learn about Trump and DeSantis, what they said, that'll be everywhere in the next week or two if it's a huge deal. Instead of sitting around eating popcorn and waiting to see what MSNBC has to say, which is obviously, if you don't see the influence on any of those channels by now, then you're just
Yeah.
you're
Well,
just,
and it's a lot of people, I'd say probably the boomer generation, a lot of them are conditioned to think in those terms of like, this is where we get our information. We get our information from the news, whether that be Fox, CNN, MSNBC, or the local news or whatever. Whereas I think that a lot of people our age are more looking at, like you said, YouTube, or let's say they have their own independent news channel, or because it's the age of technology, right? So we don't have to wait for whatever your favorite talking head is to tell us what we should be thinking, right? And I think that's what it boils down to, is just knowing where you're getting your information from. Because I mean, I'm gonna get my information that's going to be biased from the even somebody as like-minded as you. We're going to probably get it from different sources, and we're going to draw our own conclusion from it. Whereas somebody who doesn't think like us at all, or is they're gonna get it from a completely different source, and then that's gonna change the way they think about whatever political or world
or
news is.
or they're gonna find what tidbits support what Narnia facts they want. Like,
Yeah,
like if they want things to
yeah,
be
dude.
a certain
It's
way, whether
echo
it's,
chamber, bro. It's echo chamber.
whether it's realistic or not, they're gonna find it's just, it's just like a shit show, man.
Yeah,
It
well,
really
that's
is.
like I'm pretty much completely off of social media. Like, I don't post anything. I hardly ever get on it. But with YouTube's like my main little distractor, and I'm super careful about what I'll even type in or search to allow to pop up on my feed, because I don't want to,
Same.
I want to control the rabbit holes I go down, I guess you could say. So it's like,
Smart.
yeah, I mean, if all of a sudden, because there's plenty of, that a lot of these a lot of these channels are geniuses and they'll outsmart me. So if I start allowing some of the mainstream medias or some of the big stories to pop onto it, like for the most part, I don't really pay attention to anything. And to me, if it's actually worth looking at, then somebody's going to tell me about it and then I'll look at it. But for the most part, I like to kind of stay looking at the stuff I like to look at.
Yeah, man. I constantly try to like, it's a battle because it's very easy to fall down those holes. But like, I'm constantly trying to like control what information I'm intaking and analyzing the value
Yeah,
and
no,
and
dude, it's
payoff of
yeah,
processing such an entertainment. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, for me, I think that we all have a certain amount of bandwidth in our brain, or however you want to look at it. A certain amount of information and that we can store and use and to where we can actually think clearly. And like I got so much just with my family and then my job or whatever it is, that jujitsu, the whatever stuff that I actually want to fill my head with and be fully at my best for, to where if I start filling my head with a bunch of white noise that actually doesn't matter at all or I'm not going to be able to either affect it or it's not really going to affect me, then I'm literally taking away from the things that I actually care about. So
Yeah.
that's one, like, honestly, that's why I completely got off of social media, because I found that I would look at something, let's just like, I'll just use, I don't know, my sister or a family member as an example, and I'm looking at what they're saying and I'm getting frustrated with them. And I'm like, hold on a minute. Like I could just call them up and literally have a 5-minute conversation and either understand what they're saying and just be like, okay, I disagree with you, but that's fine. Um, or find out what they're actually trying to say. Maybe they're just looking for attention or whatever it might be. And I could be like, okay, well, I understand that too, rather than reading their post and being like, you know what, you're annoying to me. I'm going to, I'm going to excommunicate you from my, blah, blah, blah. So, and I think that social media does that. You see somebody post something that they don't even really think about. Maybe they're just, virtue signaling or whatever it might be. They're just trying to fit in with their group, and you get annoyed with them and you're like, I don't like that person anymore.
It's
But
a
realistically,
reactive society.
yeah, it is, bro. And so, and it creates that conflict that we don't need. So I think that's, for me, social media. I'm just, like you said, a lot of this is probably stuff. I'm not like the original thinker when it comes to this. I just know my life in particular, I just I don't have the bandwidth to keep up with that and the rest of the stuff I like to do.
And it's I mean, I get it. So easy to get drawn down it. I would be
For sure, dude.
interested
And
to.
it's not a negative thing for everybody. Like some people can do social media and have a lot of fun with it and this, that, and the other. But I've just learned, for me in particular, I'm just I'm better off without it.
Yeah, and I'm hoping it doesn't like affect my kids. Like, I mean, my daughter gets on the iPad, but she like she's on the iPad when we're home just chilling. But
Yeah,
we keep in mind like how many hours. And she
yeah,
also goes to school. She plays. If like the cool thing about it too is like if I'm like, hey, let's go outside, or let's go walk the dog, or let's go to the pool. Like she's never like no. She'll put it down
yeah,
and we'll go. So it's like kind of like a low key pastime.
bro. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Like
No.
it's. I think that realistically, I know for me. I mean, you obviously know, but if anybody who doesn't know me is listening, I have 4 kids and they're all pretty young. My oldest is 9 and my youngest is 3, and then I got a 5 and a 7-year-old in the middle. So those are young ages, and for for me to have a little peace and quiet and them not fighting with each other, sometimes either giving one of them my phone or watching TV. Like today, my 7-year-old was at wrestling practice, and it just made sense for my other 3 to, 2 of them to have my phone, my wife's phone, and then a little Nintendo Switch, and that kept them all 3 completely entertained for an hour and a half. My dog, actually, my 5-year-old ended up jumping into the practice for about an hour, but the other 2 were perfectly content sitting still for an hour and a half. Now, take away those technology sources, they're going to be running around acting like crazy people, bugging everybody, being distractions. So,
Right.
they weren't miserable either. So they got to do something that, they were both sitting in a space that might normally be boring, but stayed entertained and didn't have any
You
complaints. So
you
I
can
think that if you're,
also
yeah,
oh,
if it
sorry.
depends on how, no, I'm just saying it just depends on how you utilize those, how
Yeah,
you utilize it. Yeah.
that's what I was about to say is like you can also like you can also give them stuff that's like games, educational games or
Yeah.
educational like she watched a lot of videos like we had her for a while watching videos like teaching her colors in Spanish.
Yeah.
So she knows a lot of her colors in Spanish even.
Dude, they learn so
And
much from these videos and like what they
yes,
watch.
they're not necessarily down like the stupid like TikTok rabbit hole kind of stuff yet.
Well, but that also goes to show you, to me, if you don't monitor what they're watching, and especially as they get older, like my 9-year-old, I'm pretty strict on my older two because they have the ability to kind of, they call it search it up. They have the ability to search up some different stuff. So I make sure whatever it is that they're looking at isn't nonsense. So I actually don't really let them I don't let them get on YouTube and search anything. If they want to watch something on YouTube, they can tell me and I can type it in. So I'd
Mm.
say I'd say for that stuff, I mean, like, especially at that age, eventually they're going to be able to go on and do their own thing and figure out their way. But when they're as young as they are, I want to control what it is that's influencing them because I only have so many years to really do that.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, they're a sponge, so it's everything's crucial. You never know what's gonna stick.
Yeah,
You know what I
for
mean?
sure, for sure.
They
So
um yeah, raising kids is especially you having four of them, man. And I didn't really, I mean, 11 minutes into it, but I was like, I didn't really introduce you, but for those listening, you and I go
yeah,
pretty far back, which is crazy. You have a 9-year-old now.
yeah, I know, dude. I mean, we were like a little bit older than. I mean, it was I was probably 14, but I mean, realistically, in the grand, only a little bit older than 9. Whenever we when we first met, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
pretty
for real.
funny.
And now you come back. Yeah, you left. You went to the Coast Guard and rescue swimming.
Yeah, I did
It's
that
fucking
for
beast. We
eight,
got to
8 years.
we got to dive into that too. But what's even greater is dude, do you remember like how much we used to go like have you ever sat back and thought about like like our relationship and how shit developed, like our friendship and shit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was. I mean, we realized we had a pretty similar sense of humor, and we like to joke around in a similar way. But then what it was really well, I think you might have a different memory. It was when we started going to the gym every day together
Right.
over the summer. Is that when we started hanging out pretty much from that point on? We were hanging out probably more than just about anybody else that we
And
knew.
my boxing background versus your wrestling background.
Yeah, dude, we go back and forth on that constantly, just like which one's better. And I mean, like, I think we both realize now that it was wrestling.
Yeah. Still haven't quite let that go.
Yeah,
But bro, like it's kind of funny because like it was me going against all you wrestlers, which is funny because
yeah,
in the grand scheme of things, it just made me friends with a bunch of beast ass wrestlers.
yeah,
But here I am defending boxing and saying every fight stands up, and you guys are like every fight goes to the ground, and we were arguing about this shit for months, bro.
yeah. I mean,
Remember?
it's basically a never-ending argument because even still to this day in the UFC, I mean, like I said, I feel like the argument's settled, but that's my opinion.
Well, look what
But
stuck with me, bro. I
yeah,
mean, I remember
yeah,
going. I remember you and I. What's funny is I'm a year older, for the
yeah,
listeners, and like what happened was I did a little bit of boxing training, and I was always really into boxing. Like I loved Roy Jones Jr., Mike Tyson. I would watch Sugar Ray Leonard, and even Tommy Hearns videos like all day long. I'd catch all the boxing matches. That was like my jam, and I trained it a little bit over a summer, and then would get into it with these guys about you know they're all wrestlers and they're all diehard wrestlers. You guys were the ones spitting in cups all day long during school.
yeah. I was
It was
yeah, it was a lifestyle for sure.
fucking gross and dedicated, and
Yeah,
that's one thing I want to get into too is talking about discipline. But
yeah,
um it's just funny because how the story works out is I'm arguing with all these guys, and coincidentally a couple of your beast ass wrestling friends were my weight class, so it's almost like a put your money where your mouth is type of thing.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I remember. I don't really think we need a name drop, but I remember, one of the guys. We went outside of one house, and he was like, we were like, he was like basically arguing about takedowns and stuff like that, and get me down. I'd be like, oh, you have to get me down first. You have to
Yeah.
get me down. And I remember he like picked me up and scooped me, and I was like a squirrely fucker, bro. Like
Yeah.
now that we're this far, I realize I think and I don't know, I don't usually go like this, but I think I'm above average in like the squirrely department, bro.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that would be like if we were to look at each other as video game characters,
Mhm.
like your scrambling ability and natural, just kind of like you would probably have like, let's just say if you're a UFC character, you would probably have really high scrambling attributes. If that was, I don't know, I've never played the UFC game, but I'm just saying if scrambling was that, and it's just like anything else. Like I think that's something I really like to look at is just like natural, what comes natural to certain people,
Right.
and whether it comes natural or if it's the way that you're brought up. And I think it's both. And I'm sure that would be a topic I think would be, I could really go down a rabbit hole on that one. But yeah, no, I remember the exact situation you're talking about.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
of course you do. And then I mean, it was just like a little like I don't even remember how it ended. I just remember like kind of like it wasn't how either party expected it to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
And then as time goes on, I train a little bit more, and you and I would go to the gym and lift. And then since you're a year younger, basically we came to the agreement you and I would watch The Ultimate Fighter together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Since
Which is,
like season 1.
yeah. And now it's like tonight, the, I think it's the third episode of McGregor and
Is that tonight?
Michael
That is.
Chandler. It's tonight. Yeah. So no, it's after, like later on. Yeah. Later on, I'm going to be watching that one
That's
after this
awesome.
podcast. Yeah. So no,
Yeah.
it's super funny. Yeah.
Yeah. We used to do. We didn't miss an episode. It was religious,
Oh,
and
dude.
you and I decided like, hey, bro, like once you're done with wrestling in high school, like let's go sign up for this shit and try it
Bro,
out.
that was like even once, like as I got older, that was still like,
What a life-changing decision we made,
yeah,
bro.
dude, that was like, seriously,
On a whim.
it's still one of those things to me. I got to scratch the itch. I found that, sometimes you set goals as a 18-year-old kid, and this is what I think for me. I'm really happy I got to re-scratch it as an older adult, because a lot of times people make decisions about themselves when they're young, and then they're 30 years old and they're still thinking the same way. So when I was 18, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go be a pro fighter. I'm gonna be on the Ultimate Fighter, and that's gonna be what I do. And then I still had that goal. I joined the Coast Guard, and I still continued training and fighting at a really good gym in Texas. And I was trying to take fights there, but because of my schedule, I wasn't able to. And then I had my first kid at 22,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I'm like, well, you know what? I can't train all the martial. I basically decided I just wanted to stick with jujitsu because it was what I loved the most. I really enjoyed stand-up training, but I was at the point where I was like, you know what? I can really only train a few times a week. And why would I train? I don't know. I picked jujitsu. I just liked it a lot more than stand-up. And I ran with that pretty hard and never stopped training that. But I still had the itch that I was like, man, what if, what if I could get a shot at fighting again? And all of a sudden, my wife that I met, she's from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I got out of the Coast Guard, and I went and I was a firefighter in Albuquerque, right? And and Jackson Wink MMA is 25 minutes from my house, and
So sick.
I'm working a job that I work 48 hours straight and have 4 days off. So it's 2 days on, 4 days off, right? So that's essentially, I'm working 10 days a month. So that leaves 20 days a month that I'm off. And in between, not only did I have my first kid when I was 22, I managed to have the next four pretty much by the time I was, I guess, 28. So either way, I'm still pretty young. I'm physically in my prime. I'm a brown belt, but I'm pretty close to getting my black belt right whenever COVID hits. and all the jiu-jitsu gyms in the area shut down, right? So there I was, but Jackson Wink didn't shut down. So I'm like, I wanted to wait till I got my black belt to try to fight again, but I'm like, you know what, this is almost a perfect timing. And the schedule, like either way, to me in my head, everything lined up perfect. And then all of a sudden I realized fighting is, as a grown up, is way different than it was as an 18-year-old kid. When I think between 18 and 19 years old, I took nine fights. I had 9 amateur fights. And now I'm 28 years old, and I'm having a hard time even getting a fight, partially because of the Jackson Wink, but also partially because my schedule and, everything else. And
Are you talking pro or amateur?
well, I was trying to go pro. That was
Okay.
what the ultimate goal was. And the big thing that they talked about at that gym, because I got a manager, and I was working pretty heavily with he was a high level fighter but a really good coach also, Joey Villasenor. He was like my main coach. And then I had another really good Muay Thai coach, Alex. I don't even know his last name. He's like a secretive guy. But and then I I obviously worked some with Coach Wink and Coach Greg, and but I would say the first 2 guys I was talking about were my main coaches, and they're really big on, hey, your first fight, you don't want to take a really high level opponent. Maybe take them like your 5th fight, because you want to make sure if you're getting paid 500 and 500 for your first fight, you don't want to fight a guy who's at the same level as you. You're going to go in there and go to war with. So they were picky about who I was going to take for my pro debut, and I was just listening to everything they said, because these guys have produced champions.
No shit.
And but that also made it for me a lot harder, because now all of a sudden I'm being picky. I'm on a timeline and everything else. Either way, just not to drag this on, but I pretty much realized I got to scratch the itch. I got to train with some of the best fighters in the world, and realized, if anything, I belong. And I also got to really improve my all-around martial arts skills. And I think that's what my journey was at that point in my life. I realized that the fighter lifestyle is a lot harder to do when you're also trying to be a dad and a husband and have a full-time career. And so
It's super tough, bro.
granted, I didn't get on the Ultimate Fighter like our goal was, but I also got to see kind of like the levels of it, and realistically that it's all about dedication and just consistency. That's what consistently training jiu-jitsu allowed me to be one of the top grapplers in one of the best gyms in the world. And I got to grapple with some really really good fighters, and realize, hey, I belong with these guys on the ground. And just like we were talking, kind of to circle back, when we're talking about, at the end of the day, though, the fight starts on the feet. And so you got to have those stand-up skills to close the distance. And so it kind of goes back to, our earliest conversations when we were like 14, 15 years old, trying to figure out what the best martial art was. And it's wrestling.
The book is still open. I mean, dude, I truly sit there and think about it, and I think that we both could have done it.
It's for sure.
Had we known how to do it.
Exactly. Dedicated, like, followed the path. To me, there's a pretty straightforward path to.
But as like 18 and 19-year-olds, as we were in training, like, you and I would fucking jump in the car at any moment and drive to Tampa or drive wherever it took to get some work in.
Yeah.
But it also takes like it just shows how many aspects have to go right
for sure
to make it. Like, how many variables there are. You also have to have a good coach.
100%.
A good corner is crucial as well.
Yeah.
You've got to have the type of coach you mentioned even earlier. I don't know if we're recording yet or not, but like knowing people's styles is very important. You can't just be like the guy who's like, I would armbar there, so armbar there.
Yeah.
Maybe this guy, that's not his thing. Maybe this guy is the type of guy who needs to put his feet on the hips and get the guy off of him and start over.
Yeah, and that's what I think it's easy I'm very guilty of it. I'm watching the UFC fights and I'm seeing like a top 15 guy in the world doing something. I'm like, why is he not
And his
doing X,
jujitsu
Y,
was
Z? Why is he
ass.
not doing this? You know, I'm like sitting there trying to coach him, but it's like at the end of the day, if that was possible for him to do, if that was either one of his go-to moves, or if it was even an opening, then he'd be doing it. You know,
As,
it's such a feel.
as
And
hard as a jujitsu competition is to like operate, you know, like when you're on the mats in a jiu-jitsu tournament, how much different it is than like being on the mat with a friend.
yeah,
Like how hard that like pressure and anxiety like makes you operate. The cage is even worse.
it's different. Yeah, I mean um you know, having a fight in the cage, it's a lot of preparation. The way that you prepare for a fight is going to be, and that's what like the old, like to me, like one of the first things you hear when you're training is you're going to fight how you train. So that goes back to, like you said, having a good coach, having a good, you know, having good training partners, um, and being able to go in with a good plan and executing it. Right. So for just like you were saying, for us going down that, starting out, because we started out young, right? We were both 18.
The sport wasn't even blown up yet.
Yeah, I think I was 17. I was still 17 whenever we walked into our first jujitsu classes. So that makes you 18. And realistically, that's a great age to really be
Grinding.
starting jujitsu, especially back in 2009. Um, and yeah, if we would have continued on that path, and I don't ever like to say woulda, coulda, shoulda, because I think it's pointless. But
Right.
what I do realize is that with proper dedication and committing yourself to it and going all in, it's very doable. And that, you know, if there's an 18 or 19-year old, or like, even, you know, you shoot anybody who's at a point in their life where they want to dedicate to something and they're questioning whether they can, it's like, get the right people around you and just go for it, because you're gonna grow so much along the way just through that process of attempting a really hard thing. And
Yep.
that's what I think jujitsu is. It's a really hard thing that you do, and that's what I try to tell my kids
And
is just like, do things that are hard. You know, a lot of times I'm telling them to do something and they're like, I don't want to do that. That's hard. I'm like, good. Like, that's a reason to do it. And that's what I think that martial arts
look at
is.
that as like a
Yeah.
paywall for other people. Like
Yeah.
if something's hard and you're complaining I can't do it, it's hard. That's a good opportunity for you to look and be like, that is where 50% of people will quit. So
Yeah.
by doing it, you are
Yeah.
that much more ahead.
Yeah. I mean, 50% people will quit right there because it's hard. And then the other like 49% are going to quit somewhere along the way because it's going to continue to be hard and it's going to continue to get harder. So that's how you can separate yourself. And, you know, not that I'm sitting here saying I'm a 1% person. I mean, I'm 31 years old now, and I've got a lot of lessons and life to learn and live and everything else. But I think that of the things that I have been able to accomplish, a lot of it's just not quitting. A lot of it's just showing up and every day when you don't want to or when you do want to. It's regardless of what your mind is telling you. It's just like, no, I made this commitment to do it. I'm gonna do it. And that's, you know, that's so far of the like I said, of the few things that I have managed to accomplish, that's kind of seems like the secret recipe is just to continue, you know, put your
Consistency.
put your nose to the grindstone, right? Is that the right way to say that?
Yeah, I mean, I get you, dude. We
I've probably been saying that wrong for 20
had
years and nobody's called me out.
yeah, right. I dare him to, but no, like, I mean, it's a good point. Like, just staying with it. I mean, that's where I fucked up. When we left the team we were a part of,
Yeah.
and that whole thing kind of disintegrated for the better. I mean, shit,
Yeah.
it
It's pretty
was
toxic.
yeah, pretty toxic. That's a good way
Yeah.
to put it. I mean, I was like out, you know, you were like my partner,
Yeah.
and even though we're completely different weight classes, we were like, you know,
Yeah. I mean,
had each other's backs.
we
And
drove to the gym together every day, so it was kind of yeah.
do you remember when we got into it that one
Yeah.
day?
Yeah.
I still to this day tell this story about us getting in the car and driving home quiet.
Yeah.
not even like talking. Then eventually we like just were like, yeah, that was a pretty good punch, bro. I
Yeah.
was actually pretty rocked. Yeah, I couldn't tell, and then we got over it within a car ride.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I feel like that happens with sparring. Uh, I think that sometimes the better you know somebody, um, whether it's jujitsu or it's MMA sparring, the better you know somebody, the easier it is to go hard. Um, I don't know why that is. I
hmm,
can't, maybe you just feel safer. I think that's probably ultimately what it is. Like you feel safer going hard, even if you even if like, say, you were to knock your friend out, like at the end of the day, like it wasn't with ill intent. And even though a knockout from your best friend versus a knockout from a random stranger is still bad, it's just something about feeling safer about people who you're closer with. So that's what I noticed. The better I know somebody, the harder I can whether roll or spar with them or whatever. So
right.
that kind of goes back to just having the right people to train with.
Yeah, and just like anything else in life, like my advice would be, at my old age here, my advice would be, I heard something. You're the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most,
Yeah.
which is a cool saying. But I also apply that to you're the average of your 5 most used habits.
Yeah.
So like if if you're like good at getting out of bed and good at eating right and eating healthy, but you're bad at time management, like it's just like if you're good in like 2 or 3 fields, but you slack in the others, it's just like put yourself around like people who are doing it right and that you actually want to be,
Yeah.
and don't be around like the people that hold you back.
That's no,
But
I think I 100% agree with that. I think that's huge that, um, being, it's, when we were growing up, it was called stuck up, it was called this, it was called that. But I think that ultimately, as you get older, um, you do need to kind of be selective of who you're going to surround yourself with, because you end up talking like that person, you end up acting like that person, you end up, everything you do is going to be similar to what they do.
like
And
if you're in a toxic place,
yeah, you're
your
just going to start
resilience is
picking up.
gonna wear
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, it's you, like, I don't care how disciplined you are and everything else, like it's way easier. I think the metaphor I always heard, like if you're standing up on a chair, it's way easier for the person to pull you off the chair than it is for you to pull them up on that chair. I know it's pretty cheesy, but I
Makes
think that's
sense.
a pretty good example of just, hanging out with people who are gonna who are
Boost
gonna
you.
want to, yeah, you're not gonna want to be pulling them down, you're gonna want to be pulled up by them, and vice versa. So
And or knowing where to hang out with people. Like you might have someone who's a piece of shit outside the gym, but good for you in the gym.
mm,
So like, all
for
right,
sure.
this is a good training partner, or he's a good gym partner, but not a good person for me to be around.
100%, 100%. Yeah, that was big in MMA at, um whenever I was fighting, I was really big on that, because that's what was kind of funny is,
You get like
um
smart, ambitious people, or you get like just scumbags
yeah,
with
well
nothing to lose.
that's what was interesting was I did develop a couple of people who I gained a lot of respect for and was friends with. There was a lot of people who I loved training with, great sparring partners, absolute killers. But once once we left the gym, like there was nothing there was nothing outside the gym that I would want to do with that person, just because, not, like, not because I didn't like them, but just because they were living a completely different lifestyle than me. I mean,
He's
I'm
a
a
hell
fan.
of a guy. He smoked crack though. He smoked
Yeah,
crack.
hell of a guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good dude. Good dude. As long as after you talk shit about somebody, you say good dude though. That's
Yeah, right.
that's a rule.
With all due respect.
Yeah, yeah. Um, no, but it's pretty funny that that you brought that up, because I think that even in jujitsu, you end up being a product of the people who you can train hard with, right? Because no matter how big of a gym you're in, you end up having like a small group of people that you end up having as your main training partners. Um, and that's just probably just based on your level compared to the rest of the people's level at the gym.
Hmm.
But that's going to push you massively, whether you choose to, make your 5 main training partners, let's say 5 people who are worse than you, um, then you're going to probably you're probably going to get pretty complacent, or you make your 5 main training partners, let's say 3 of them are better than you and 2 of them are somewhere right around the same
Chumps.
level as you. Yeah, chumps, let's say. But then realistically, you save the, let's call them chumps. You save the chumps for like all of your other roles, right? Because you're going to have, even outside of your 5 main training partners, you're going to have just the rest of the people at the gym that you still roll and train with. So that's what I think it's important to, you know, to even develop those types of relationships in the gym too.
What do you think about when you like when it's time to push yourself? Like, what do you think is your push?
Well,
You
a
just
lot
don't
of
want to
times,
be average?
I mean, I think that a lot of it, it's like what motivates me as
Yeah,
to,
like
um, I think, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just, I have a very competitive nature. Um, but yeah, it's, so a lot of it comes from being competitive with my training partners. So a lot of it comes with being competitive with myself and just kind of never being satisfied. It's probably like a, I don't know what that is, but
I think
um,
that's what it is with me. I'm like never satisfied with
yeah,
myself. I think I'm like
and
too hard on myself sometimes.
yeah, and I think that can be like a double-edged sword. You gotta pat yourself on the back when it's time, but like then move on. Um, and that's what I think. That's what I think for the things, like let's say when I got my black belt, let's say I was like, man, this is awesome. And then literally I rolled and it was exactly the same as when I was a brown belt. Just like by that point, I knew how it was going to be. And then it was kind of just like the excitement was there, and I'm still very proud of that accomplishment. But I remember when I was a blue belt wanting to be a purple belt so bad, the frustration that I had that I wasn't a purple belt was much greater than the satisfaction I had of actually getting my purple belt, if that makes sense. So to me, that showed me that I wasted so much energy that was kind of just inappropriate, I guess you could say. Like there was no reason for me to even be wanting that belt because it didn't do anything for my jiu-jitsu. But
I covered that topic on this channel
yeah,
before. It's kind of
it's
funny you're
real.
saying it.
It was very, I was,
Just
and I yeah, I was in,
it
I
just
was in,
goes to validate
yeah,
it. A black
yeah.
belt's now saying the same exact fucking thing.
It was, to me, I was on a small island in North Carolina where I wasn't really under a black belt. And from the time I got my blue belt in 2010, I think it was like 2016 when I got my purple belt. And I was training that whole time. So I was a pretty good blue belt. But there was a lot of stuff that I had to work on. But what I did learn that was I would much rather be that purple belt. I would much rather be that blue belt that everybody's like, damn, like when is that guy gonna get his purple belt? I'm sick of getting tapped out by a blue belt than being that purple belt that everybody's like, I don't know, like that guy, that's
Yeah,
questionable, And
like
so yeah, it's either way. That's all kind of more social. I would say that's more social aspects of jiu-jitsu that we care about, but it's real.
I'd rather be the guy where they're like, it's about fucking time. Like
Yeah,
that's overdue.
that was what, when I did get my black belt, I was really proud that everybody was kind of saying that, like, man, you're like very well deserved. And maybe people are just being nice to me because they're my friends, but it was, like that was the general thing that people were saying to me. And
I don't
that's
know. I think our gym's pretty. I feel like our gym's pretty legit. Like
yeah,
I know I know every gym thinks they're pretty legit, but I mean we have like we just had Eric Muniz and his brother the past 2 nights there,
yeah,
hanging out, teaching classes and shit. I mean,
that's about as legit as it gets.
David hangs out there. Yeah,
Yeah.
like you've got like literally world class people coming through our gym all the time, and
Yeah. Well, if
and
those guys like hanging out at the gym, and I'm just now kind of dipping my toes into it, and kind of I'm getting my schedule back to where I can start training there on a regular basis. But
I think you'll be up
yeah,
there, bro. I think you'll
no,
enjoy it.
I think so too. And that was just from my few encounters of being there. And I visited throughout the years that I've been gone, and it was literally pretty much the only place that I came and visited just because I did like the vibe and I liked the training atmosphere. And realistically, for me, I want to get in there and grind. Like I want to have people who I can just lock horns with and grind, and that's what pushes me, and kind of back to what you're saying, like what gets me going is like I just really enjoy that aspect of jiu-jitsu, having somebody win or lose, whether I'm winning, whether I'm the person who ends up being the better of the two, or whether they slightly edge me out. I after training with Zach the other day, I was so I'll use the word stoked. I was so stoked on how that role went, and I would say he kind of had the advantage the majority of the role, but I was recognized. I'm like, man, I was trying to get my I was we were pretty close in a lot of areas, but he was leading the dance. He was leading the dance, and I was reacting to him, and I was reacting to him, and that just when I got home, I was like, man, that's awesome. As competitive as I am,
He
I
was
think,
stoked too, bro.
yeah, but that's what gets when we say like what gets you going, like that's what gets me going is
He
having roles that you're just back and forth and close, whether I'm defending the submission or whether I'm almost getting the submission, or whether it doesn't matter.
he,
That's what I love about jiu-jitsu is that part of it.
he gets a little bit jealous when I talk about Donald, but I think he understands now.
Yeah,
I think it's
definitely.
I would bring you up like twice, and he'd be like, "Donald, my friend Donald." I'm like, "Oh,
That's
oh,
funny,
Badge,
dude.
don't worry, Badge. You're still number one over here.
Oh.
Don't worry, man. I'll still ask you questions every now and then."
Yeah, no, it's funny. Yeah, no, Zach definitely seems like he's got that like good shit talking spirit about him. So
He
that's awesome.
actually
Yeah,
doesn't, bro. He's
really.
actually stupid as. No, I'm just kidding.
No, yeah,
Nah, dude, I talk shit to him no matter what.
yeah.
I think that's what he thinks is great.
It's a good dude. It's like one of the best.
Like
To me,
even if
it's one of the
he
best ways
whoops
to
my
carry
ass,
yourself in life.
I'm gonna make him work for it, make him
Yeah,
sweat.
yeah. No, I think that personalities are what allow us to, if you've got a personality that you can't have somebody talk shit to you, then your jiu-jitsu might not be for you, because it's literally that's what jiu-jitsu kind of is. It's just
Dude,
constantly testing your ego.
it's becoming a fucking problem outside the gym, and I'm just noticing it because I'm in a corporate environment.
Yeah.
And I've already been talked to.
Yeah.
I'm like, and that's like literally what the owner said. He's like, "You're in a corporate environment. You're not at the gym with your
Yeah.
buddies just talking shit." He's like,
Yeah.
"You have to be careful what you say and how you talk here." And I'm like, dude, not one part of me, like, I'm kind of an asshole about it, but like part of me is like, if words can hurt your feelings that bad, then you just need to work, like, just like,
I don't
I
know.
don't
I can't imagine that. That's like, yeah. I mean, carrying yourself that way.
I get like, yeah, I don't know how to explain it. Like,
Well, you don't. I mean, like, nobody wants to be around somebody who's literally like putting them down for who they are. Like
right,
that's not okay. But if you can't take somebody like
joking
farting,
around or
yeah,
like,
like farting in the room with you, like, oh, that was offensive. It's like, dude, it was a fart. You fart too.
or just like dropping,
yeah,
like a term of endearment.
yeah, exactly, dude.
or or just like, even like, just,
Yeah,
I don't know, it's so weird. It's like everybody there cusses. Nobody there is perfect. Nobody there is at all times super fucking professional. But
yeah,
yeah, you like a few cuss words slip out in an exchange of, like, a heightened conversation or whatever, however you want to put it.
yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, well, that offended me. And some of the people complaining in that environment weren't even there when
Yeah.
I
Well,
was
dude,
doing
I think that's like a lot of people just have that.
soft.
Well, they probably they probably have they probably never really get that like, or I don't know if like they do get that upset, but they're so like they try to cloak it so much that they're such a like great, like they try to hide that side of them so heavily that they're like, oh, I don't ever get mad. I don't ever get frustrated. I don't ever express myself in an angry way. It's like, yeah, you do. Just just don't lie. And yeah, naturally, like we can't live in a society that people are going off and like punching each other in the face. Like that's probably not a good way to go about it. But if somebody gets annoyed with you, they should probably be able to like, you know, at least confront it. And
Yeah,
that's, and that's kind of the world we live in, where we like to hide the fact that things can get a little bit charged sometimes, and rather than just dealing with the chargedness of the situation, we just hide it and pretend it doesn't exist in humans. It's
Yeah,
it's a weird
I'm just a
thing.
pretty direct person.
Yeah.
And I play both sides of it. Like if you're direct to me, I don't usually let it offend me.
Yeah.
And if it did offend me, I would ask, like, confront, or be like, like, what did you mean by that? Or are you saying, like, are you implying this?
Yeah.
And, let them explain themselves, and how you can have an adult conversation, whether you agree or disagree. You can have an adult conversation with somebody,
and then walk away, and in 5 minutes,
and
if
even
you're
if
a
you
little
don't
bit
like
annoyed,
even if you don't like the person, you could just be like, yeah, I don't like how he talks. I don't like how he talks to me. Dude, that's great. That's fine. But like,
we
just
can still
like,
work together, right?
just, I don't know. Like
Yeah.
it's a little bit over. Well, like, it's probably like I'm a little bit too much, and it's something I'm working on. I'm working on my cussing.
For sure.
I really am. But
Yeah. Well, and dude, I mean, I think for me, I've always thought about myself, and because I've military for 8 years, I guess, I mean, Coast Guard for 8 years, and it's a branch of the military, and firehouse, I was in the fire department for 4 years, and that's kind of more of a ball busting environment where you're around people that, you can't go and just say whatever you want to whoever you want. There's a structure to it, but at the end of the day, it's kind of more, you're just talking shit with, like, the people who you're friends with. You just kind of talk shit to them. So, and I've always thought about that some of that humor that exists there, I was like, I don't know how it would be able to function in a different style of work setting, because it's all I've known since I was really 19. But it's a funny dynamic, and I don't have anything to really talk on it other than just like my imagination of what it would be like.
right. And I'm not saying like I'm running around like,
Yeah, no, I know exactly.
slapping
I know what
people's
you mean.
asses and being like, "Get up there, pussy!" Like I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just talking about like a slight intensity.
You're not ass grabbing, Kevin.
No.
Yeah. all the hot dudes.
Oh yeah. No homo. He didn't say it. He didn't say it. He just kept walking.
Hey man, I'm gonna leave my preferences out of this.
Just accept it for what it is.
Yeah.
And have a good day.
Yeah.
2023.
Yeah.
Well, this month I can do it as much as I want. I can't say shit. But no, it's more of talking with an intensity. Like,
yeah, I know what you
think,
mean. I'm just joking around.
I don't mean it to be toxic masculinity or whatever it's labeled these days. Or it's just more so like I just don't like. I like directness, and I feel like communication is overlooked, and it's like with most people, a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like if I was mad at you and didn't tell you I was mad at you, but I treated you different because I was mad at you, in my head, that's like a
that's
like a
passive
bitch.
aggressive. That's way worse. That's way worse than just like telling somebody. Like, and
Yeah,
that's a toxic work environment.
that's
And
pass.
yeah, yeah,
You
dude.
say passive aggressive. I say that's like a bitch ass way to handle things. Like, be
Yeah,
like, hey man, like that kind of pissed me off. Like, I don't want it around me. Or hey man, that I didn't agree with that. Like, please don't say. Or
yeah,
just kind of be like, hey, like, I don't know what to tell you, but that for whatever reason. But it's weird, where I'm at. Like whenever I have like an episode, not an episode, that makes me sound psychotic. Whenever I have whenever I have like an issue, like, and it's something like illogical, like, hey, I'm the person who's like, I'm the person who's in charge of this, and nobody's keeping me up to date. So how do you expect me to do my job? If I say something like that, right? It's pretty direct. I'm in charge of this. Nobody's telling me anything. How do you expect me to get it done? People will like look at me like I'm cussing them out or going crazy at them, and I'm like, bro, I'm not mad. I'm not giving attitude. I'm just addressing the situation.
being direct. People aren't used to directness. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm addressing it directly because that's how I think the fastest way to solve the problem and get it done and move on.
And that's where, like, like I said, in the military and fire department, that's how things are handled. It's literally like you confront it right there at the lowest, like handling things at the lowest level, whatever that may mean. Like, handle it person to person before you go and tell your supervisor. Like that's literally
Yes.
that's how you handle things. If I can go to you, which I should have the ability to go to you and be like, hey bro, like that wasn't cool. That, why are you talking to me like that? Let's just say I'm talking, then you could explain yourself and be like, okay, cool, no big deal. Let's move on and we can work together. Rather than me going to my boss and explaining the situation and then them having to like write, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. Like, why not handle it at the lowest level?
So
Yeah.
in the military, was the Coast Guard like, is it more like a laid back scenario? I mean, it's pretty fucking beast. I'm surprised we didn't even get into that yet. The rescue swimming. I
Well,
was
it
just
was,
watching The Deadliest Catch before you called me,
yeah.
and it just so happened the episode I was watching, there was Coast Guards talking about one of the boats from the show
Yeah.
flipped over, and I guess there were 7 people on the boat, and they only found 2 of them.
Yeah.
And they were talking all about like the whole episode was the Coast Guards explaining like what they did to find the people and the call and the situation. And then it was also talking like the crabbers were also talking about like what it's actually like out there and how easy stuff and what happened and what went wrong.
Yeah. Well, and I mean that's the ocean for you right there. I mean, especially
25-foot waves.
yeah, the Deadliest Catch. What was that, filmed out in Alaska?
Yeah.
So I mean, those seas are some of the gnarliest seas in the world, and I mean, on the drop of a dime, it can go from pretty normal to like a wave can easily, let's say, triple in height from what the normal is. So a 25-foot sea average, all of a sudden you got a 50-foot wave and you weren't expecting that. And it just, like capsizes your boat. And that, like that's the severity of it. And I don't know the particular situation, but I mean, a lot of times whenever a call like that will come out, let's say 7 people were on this boat, um, depending on who makes the call or whether it's just some of their beacons that are going off, alerting the dispatchers.
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna tell you a lot, and then from there, it's like, were they wearing life jackets? I mean, a capsized boat, especially one like that with all that equipment, there's so much that can go wrong there. It's that's kind of one of those situations that those 2 people that were found are so fortunate because probably they were wearing their life jackets. If they're in 25-foot seas and they survived, or they were able to grab a hold of some debris, and they're fortunate to find debris they can grab onto. So yeah, I mean, things can get pretty crazy in the ocean pretty quick, and that's why I mean, for my particular job being a rescue swimmer, that it was so intense and so difficult because I pretty much just had to go into those seas without a life jacket and just fins on, and get people who should hopefully be wearing a life jacket and bringing them to safety inside the helicopter.
Do coasties ever get lost?
Not really. Not like rescue swimmers have never been. Rescue swimmers in particular have never been like on a mission. Never had a fatality. But helicopters do crash and things do happen like that. But it's not usually because that. But that goes back to the training. The training's so difficult to prevent of a rescue swimmer not being able to complete the job. So it's one of the harder programs that the military has to put on. The attrition rate's pretty high. I think that on average, like, it's a 60% failure rate after the pre-screening. So people who are already physically fit, showing up to school prepared, are about 40% over the course of 30 years have made it. So it's pretty tough. I'd say it was still probably the most challenging thing in a short amount of time, physically and mentally, that I've been able to get through. And I still sometimes wonder how I even did it. Like, it's one of those things that I'm just like, man, like, thankfully my body didn't break down, and I think I just wanted it pretty bad and prepared pretty hard for it. Because I didn't come from a swimming background. Being from Florida, I realized that, we swim a lot more than people who are from the middle of the country, but I wasn't a competitive swimmer or anything. A lot of it just came from the mental toughness that I learned from wrestling and martial arts.
Oh,
It's
I
things like,
remember going to pools with you. Remember?
yeah. Well,
Like
that was it. Yeah.
we were
Yeah.
going to
Once,
pools and swimming together.
yeah, just that was that once I had it in my head, that's what I wanted to do. I kind of went all in on it. And even then I had a lot from when we were going to the pool and swimming to when I actually showed up. I had such a long process of getting myself more and more and more comfortable. And even by the time I got into school, there was still levels of comfort that I wish I had overcame before there. But that's kind of how I would say it all boils down to with mental toughness and stuff. If you can experience those challenging times that you're going to experience, let's say in jiu-jitsu or in something like that beforehand intentionally, then it's going to be that much easier. So that's why we train, in jiu-jitsu matches, that's in practice. That's why we train so hard in practice, so that when we get into matches, we understand the feeling that's going to come from a tournament. And then the more you compete in tournaments, the more you're familiar, so that all of a sudden that feeling, those jitters aren't as intense. So I think that's what that training that training was all about, was being prepared, showing up to it. And yeah, that's kind of a long-winded answer that I don't even know.
No, I mean, dude, this is all information that most people don't know or have, or like not many. It's not too often you meet like a rescue swimmer.
Yeah,
It's one of those branches that like it is and should be highly respected. I mean, you meet like a ranger or a SEAL, and you're like, damn, this dude's fucking, probably a badass or a mentally tough dude. But like rescue swimming is no joke either. You got to pretty hard, from what I've heard or whatever. Pretty
it's
hard entry.
it's comparable to I don't know. I haven't been through any of the other ones, but I have worked out with some Air Force PJs, and just kind of like shooting the shit with them about training. It's a similar type grind to what the PJs go through. Those are the pararescue. Those guys are super legit too, in the same category. Um, and it's and like I got to know SEALs when I was living in North Carolina and Virginia. I got my brown belt from a Navy SEAL. He was my black belt I got my purple and brown belt from him, and super mentally tough dude. We didn't really talk training or anything other than, it's just kind of one of those things that it's just like, yeah, you got through it, and obviously you're proud to say you accomplished it, but at the end of the day, it's just like I talked about with getting getting that black belt. It's just like, all right, well, cool. Like I'm happy that I accomplished that, but now it's time to do the job. And the job, you have to continue training in that manner if you want to be able to do it safely and effectively. And you don't want to be, I'm telling you this, in the types of communities that we're talking about, you don't want to be the guy who makes it through the program and then lets yourself get really out of shape, because then people are going to look at you and be like, are you sure you can do this job still? And it's a
You're a liability.
yeah, you got a lot on your shoulders. You're kind of you might be the last hope for someone else's survival in a really bad situation. So you better make sure. And that's in in the community that I was in as a rescue swimmer. It was, if you were out of shape, um, you'd start getting some funny looks. And there's a pretty hard physical fitness test that you got to take every couple months. So if you can't pass that, then man, like I'll just put it that way. Like it's similar. Like you don't want to be that guy who gets his black belt and then stops rolling and gets really fat and out of shape, and then people will start looking at you like, well, are you even a black belt still? Like you were good once, obviously, to get to this point, but now can you even roll? And, and that's not, I understand that injuries happen and stuff, but you kind of got to, if you want to keep that respect, you got to keep tapping out the purple belts. You got to keep tapping out the brown belts. Otherwise, it's just like, well, if you're a black belt and you're showing up and the blue belts are kicking your ass every day, then you should probably recognize that you're not training hard anymore.
Right. Well, then what do you do?
You start back from square one, the same way you did as a white belt. You got to realize, hey, like I got to this point by showing up to class and getting tapped out by everyone, and you got to regain that respect, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're, to me, I think that's the only way to go about it. If you're that black belt that lets themselves go, you gotta realize, like, all right, this happened, because for some guys it's gonna happen because of injuries or because of like obligations outside of jiu-jitsu that you can't, for whatever reason, you can't train. But then you can't just be that black belt who shows up to class and just avoids all the hard rolls. You got to realize, like, okay, you know what, there's going to be this purple belt might tap me out today, but I'm going to keep training, and you're going to get that muscle memory a lot faster because you're going to have that baseline knowledge. And
Right.
And like I said, you got to kind of follow the process that you did in order to get to that point in the beginning, where you don't dodge rolls, and you show up, and round five comes, and we're doing 10 rounds, and round 5 comes, and that beast purple belt kind of makes that eye contact with you without challenging you, and you're like, yeah, let's roll. The same way you did whenever you were a purple belt trying to become a black belt. And I think that's kind of the process you got to follow to become your best, no matter what. If you let's say if you want to push yourself and get better,
Mm-hmm.
you have to take that role that is going to push you to your limit. It's going to push you to a place that you don't really like to go, because nobody likes being pushed to their limit. I don't care what you say. Getting pushed to your limit is a super uncomfortable feeling, and it's natural for us to avoid that. So you have to almost go against your tendency, and that's what's beautiful about jiu-jitsu, is you have another person there who's taking their will and pushing it up against yours. So you basically don't have a choice, but in some roles, but to get pushed to your limit. And that's why it's so hard, and why so many people quit, because I saw it in coaching youth wrestling. Little kids, anytime they got to a place mentally that they hadn't been before, they cried. They always cried. And it's because to me, that just told me, like, they just pushed themselves to a place they'd never been before, and it's uncomfortable. So, and we're basically, as adults, we're just big little kids, and we're still going to kind of have that same type of reaction. We might not cry. I mean, I still do, but
I was just about to say, it's okay to show some vulnerability on the podcast.
Good. Yeah, I think
Well,
so.
I've got a unique situation for you.
Yeah.
All right, and speaking of being vulnerable, I'll be a little bit vulnerable right now. So I'm at a point right now, and I don't necessarily think it's going to last forever, but I don't want to give you a scapegoat either. So
Yeah.
go into this as with a touch of salt, or whatever, hint of salt, or whatever, side of salt, piece of salt, little dab of salt,
like beer salt, or like
we'll go Himalayan.
Okay, the pink stuff.
Yeah, the pink stuff, the good shit.
Yeah.
But so from day one, I've always pushed hard and scrapped, and I do remember, especially like the blue belt run.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like blue belts have like the most to prove, especially in their heads, like, because you have to be better than the white belts, or else you look like a dumbass. Like, you look like you suck.
Yeah.
And then, but you also like want to show purple belts you're good.
Yeah.
Like, you look at like purple and brown belts and black belts is like, oh fuck, like I gotta fight as hard as I can, or else they're gonna think I suck. Like,
and that's who you want to be, right? You want to be a purple belt, and you want to be a brown belt as a blue belt.
And now, yeah, and I've noticed since purple belt, and I don't know, and I try to be humble. I don't, and if I'm sounding too like,
Bro,
I don't mean this in a cocky manner at
yeah,
all.
no,
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if it's just because of the knowledge I've obtained and the amount of mat time I put in, that those rolling with blue belts a lot of times doesn't really even tire me out.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get the same sweat or like headache or massive workout that I used to. I do get it with other people at the gym, but I also roll at like a slower pace nowadays.
Yeah.
And a little bit of it's due to injuries, like my neck.
Yeah.
I got tired of getting stingers in my neck, or like
Mhm.
my neck getting inflamed, or going home
Sure.
with like bad headaches because I so I'm trying to roll smarter. Is that so? What would you think? Like, is that like a like you need to push harder, or is that a new me beginning?
No, I think that exactly what you're learning to adapt with, and that's a lot of times whenever for me, weird injuries, and my neck is pretty jacked up too from doing this for so long. For me, my main goal when I roll is to not let anybody get a hold of my head, and so I've had to find different ways to approach that. And I think that sometimes finding a way to not go super intense and super crazy, that's ultimately the goal, right? Um, is
Like,
is
I'm more cautious rolling now.
to effortlessly beat someone with your jiu-jitsu, right? And it's whenever you're rolling against somebody who's at the same level or better than you, that they're kind of controlling the dance and they're not letting you use your jiu-jitsu. Let's say they're making you use reaction and defense. Defense is way more exhausting in jiu-jitsu. So no, I think that's normal, especially, I mean, you're getting pretty close to your brown belt, that you are finding more effortless ways. And as
I hope
we
not.
as we're entering our 30s, we don't recover as fast as we did when we were 21. So you kind of have to also think of it that way, that, hey, if I redline, if I let my heart rate get up to 200 5 days a week, I'm going to get injured. And that's what I've noticed, that even if it's just like a little injury, a lot of times it's just because I'm overtraining. So there has to be that balance, whether it's,
See,
and
and
we've
this goes
talked.
back to me
Yeah.
being hard on myself, is
Yeah.
because like I'll go home and be like at the gym, hour and a half training, I'll be like, oh man, I pushed myself pretty hard. Like,
Yeah.
like I tried hard to get out of positions I was stuck in. I tried hard to advance positions I'm trying to learn. And then I'll go home and I'll be like, man, I just feel like I could have beat that position if I tried a little bit harder.
Yeah.
I feel like I could have done that. And then that entails the next time you go, you've got that like hunger and that fucking
Yeah.
guilt and that little voice in the back of your head. Like, last time you bitched out, bro. This time
Yeah.
you're not going to bitch out.
Well,
Like,
that's that man in the mirror, right? You gotta, like, and we all face it. I don't care. You go home, and we all do it. We all sometimes, we could have went for that. Let's say either we could have went for that. We were on mount, and we could have went for that arm bar and that really hard roll, but we knew if we go for it, then there's 3 minutes left, and this dude's gonna come after me and try to take my head off, right? So
right.
so instead, I'm just gonna chill and mount, and I'm gonna smash him for the next 3 minutes and use way less energy, right? So there's, we all have those, even, and that's an example of being dominant, and rather than going for the submission and pushing yourself, understanding that, like, hey, I'll probably get this submission and they're gonna tap, but then we're gonna have to slap and bump again, and I'm gonna have to repass his guard and re-get to mount, and shit. Maybe his cardio is better than mine, and maybe he's a little bit more competitive than me because I just tapped him out, and he's trying to get me back. Like,
Yeah.
we have to go home and look ourselves in the mirror and be like, you know what? If I want to get better at jujitsu, I need to go for that armbar, and then the next time in mount, I'm gonna go for that armbar, right? And I think that's when we grow, is when we face ourselves, because I feel like when we're talking about as a blue belt, we're really trying to prove ourselves to our peers that we belong there. Um,
100%.
we're you're trying to prove that, like, hey, like, I'm not just some white belt who just got his. I'm deserving of a purple belt, and I'm gonna prove to everyone here. I'm gonna get so good that everybody's gonna be like, why is that guy not a purple belt? But then once we're pretty much, like, to me, purple belt and above, you're kind of doing it for yourself, because you've already proved to everybody else that, hey, like, I'm pretty legit. So I think it's those conversations with yourself that really, you gotta, you just gotta be honest with yourself. Did I bitch out, or did I really go for it? And
I
like,
can't, I can't tell if I'm being a bitch or I'm being smart.
yeah, well, no, and I no,
That's my
and to
struggle right
me,
now.
it sounds like what you're describing. That sounds like you're being smart. I'm taking it to the next level, to where, like, like, the answer to the question better than I do, right? Like, you know
Mhm.
that you're being, to me, like, that you're being smart, but I think that, like, I'm gonna be 100% honest. There's times when I'm rolling that I'm like, man, I got his back, and that bow and arrow is right there. But you know what? I'm gonna chill here on his back until the round's up because I'm exhausted rather than pushing myself.
Well, it's
Or
good. It's good to know that, like, because
and I
you're
think
not. I don't think you're like average. I think you're like a grinder. You're not the type of role that people are gonna be like, all right, I'm gonna go. This is gonna be a nice, relaxing role.
no, yeah, and that's and
So
I'll
it's good to
admit
hear
that.
that even
Yeah.
even that comes across your mind.
Yeah, oh for sure. And I battle myself every time I go into a hard roll. Like that's why I know we're talking about it, but when I rolled with Zach the other day, it was like there was because he's at the same level. Like I said, he was leading the dance, and to me, I didn't get to choose when I chilled. I was because I was, and that's why sometimes it's way more exhausting going against somebody who you're a step behind him, or you're just a little behind him and you're trying to gain the advantage versus the other way around.
Mm.
To where like that's why I had to run out of the gym to puke because um right now I'll be honest, like I'm pretty used to being the guy setting the pace. But that's what excites me, as now I got somebody who's gonna,
Ooh, that's so perfect, bro. Because I'm,
yeah,
I'm like, I think that's one thing. I'm not really a pace setter. I'm more of like a counter,
yeah.
and so I think I do well with the guys who set the pace, like
Yeah.
Zach or you.
Well, that dude, I think that's what purple belt is. Like purple belt, you are used to that, and I've been that. What you're describing, I've been there for a long time, but now, um, now
I
that
like it, bro. I'm
now that
happy
I'm
with it.
yeah, now that I'm a black belt, I'm kind of getting used to the other side of things where no, I get to set the pace, and like, yeah, of course. And of course I've had roles. I had some monsters where I came from who they would set the pace sometimes, but for the most part, it's
But
I
it's weird, dude. When I
yeah,
compete, I set the pace.
100%. Yeah, and that's what it should be
Isn't that weird?
when you compete. You should be. That's you forcing them to fight your style. When you compete, that's what you want to do. You don't want to fight their fight in a competition. In a competition, you want to go into it with your game plan,
Do you
and
think? Do you
and
think
that
that matches my personality? Like going down the what you were saying in the beginning of the podcast. Is that like a personality matching?
yeah, I mean, I think that's like you can. I think that yeah, I
Are we
think that
are we full circling back to that?
I think we're psychoanalyzing ourselves from within, and I'd say my analysis that you being like you're a pretty easygoing guy, for the most part, and that says a lot with the way you're describing that you roll. Like you're pretty go with the flow, um, but then whenever let's say you want something, you go pretty hard at it, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what competition would be. Like you go with the flow whenever you're training, but whenever it comes time to like trying to take what's rightfully yours, like you step up and say like, hey, that's mine, I'm gonna go for it 100%. And that's what competition is. That to me is, that's not just the day-to-day, that's going after what your goal is, right? So yeah, dude, jiu-jitsu's life, bro. That's that's what I think it
It's the craziest shit, bro. You can't
yeah,
explain it to people, and it's not cool from out like looking out. It's really not. It's
yeah.
like an acquired taste that all of a sudden goes fucking nuts.
Unless you've trained jujitsu, when you're listening to what we're saying, you can't even like, you'd be like, what are they talking about? How is jujitsu life? Like, how is jujitsu a
These
representation
freaking
of your
meatheads.
personality? But like my wife who just started training, we've been married over 10 years, and she just started training a couple months ago. That's what she told me. She's like, and I think women can pick up on this stuff better than men do in general. But she said it's when she rolls with somebody, there's like an instant just like transfer of like who they are. And I think that's a perfect way to put it. Like
Yeah,
if you're kind of a if you're kind of just a dickhead in general, whenever, especially probably if you're rolling with a woman, um, she's gonna tell right away, like, oh man, this guy's kind of or this guy or girl, let's just be real blunt, um, is kind of a dickhead, and and I think that was just cool for me to hear her. That was one of the first things she said about jiu-jitsu. She's like, yeah, I can tell who a person is almost right away after we've rolled. And I think that's so true. Like um that's why I think you make to me, like, you make the best friends I have are the people who I've trained with, and
Right.
I think that's because it's an instant, like, okay, yeah, we're going to be bros. I can just tell by the way we roll. Like,
So
we don't
that's how
even,
you think. That's how you think, like personality,
yeah,
or earlier, were you talking about like because you mentioned earlier like that's a rabbit hole I go down or we could go down.
yeah.
Were you talking more about how personality reflects your training, or are you talking more about like I kind of forgot, or were you talking
Yeah.
more about how like learning?
Well, I think it's both,
I
right?
guess that is
Like,
both. Yeah.
it's. I think that the way that you train and the way that you approach jujitsu, and this is kind of a quote that I heard a while ago, and I've tried to live my life by it. Um, and it really works in jiu-jitsu. Is how you do anything is how you do everything. So the way that you approach jiu-jitsu, let's say you approach jiu-jitsu in a very lazy manner, that's probably the same way you approach work. Um, let's say that you treat the people closest to you like shit. um, that's probably how you're going to treat your training partners. Um, and same thing. Let's just say, like, your work ethic. If you're naturally a lazy person, you're gonna be a lazy person on the mats, and you can't hide that. And I think that's what I think. Where I would say I could go down a whole, I'm not trying to sit here and psychoanalyze everybody.
Right.
Through I mean, even though I did study sports psychology for a few years. I don't quite have my degree, but like sports and performance psychology is what I've kind of studied the most, and I think that it's a pretty interesting thing how much the mind has to do with um, just everything in any kind of training, because it's we don't fully the mind is the thing that within the human body that I'd say, like, we probably understand the least. Um, we understand how the heart works pretty well, but we don't understand how the mind works, and but I think that with jujitsu, you understand, like, you can understand yourself and the people around you way better than you can from just about anything else. Like, other sports are probably pretty similar, but I haven't done a lot of other sports, so I can't really talk about those.
I do. I mean, I do agree with that. Like you do see like a lot of personality reflection in roles. That's for
Yeah,
sure. Um, and maybe that's why people get addicted to it, and it becomes like such a good growth.
yeah, yeah,
Humble like it. There's douchebags everywhere you go, but it does a pretty good job at filtering out douchebags.
yeah, yeah,
If you can't, I mean, you do get the people who can kind of fucking bullshit their way through class. Don't get me wrong.
yeah, for sure, for
Pick
sure.
the. It's kind of funny when you see like some of the blue belts, to be frank and or blunt. Like when you see some of the blue belts who get their blue belt, and they never, you know, ask the guy above them to roll. Which I know in a lot of schools you're not supposed to ask the upper belt, but like if the professor's like, all right, you pick, and they
Yeah,
go and pick like a white belt.
you can pick without picking. You can kind of like look over at a person and call them
Right.
out. That's, yeah. I know exactly what you mean. It's that blue belt who gets their blue belt and just like, all right, I'm gonna smash them like white belts who've been training for a month, because
Yeah.
I've been training a whole year now, and
Probably injure them. Probably injure them
yeah,
and shit.
yeah, they're just there to stroke their ego at that point. Yeah, yeah,
Dude,
dude, it's funny.
what a crazy journey, and
Yeah,
it kind of sucks that it's cool, but it kind of sucks. Like when you FaceTime me when you got your black belt, I'm like, it's just
yeah,
like, so I had the vibe. Like I was just like, Don got his black belt or something.
yeah, dude.
Like there's a FaceTime coming through from Don, and you were like, well, you
It
had
was
the
at a
belt in your
weird
mouth.
time too. Yeah,
That
yeah,
was so cool. And now it's like full circle. You came back here, and
yeah.
our gym is like full of them now.
Yeah,
I
no,
know.
I'm excited to be training at Supremacy, and it's like I said, I've only really gotten to train twice since I've gotten back, because I've been doing some scrambling right now. That's it's a jujitsu metaphor. Just
Oh,
been just working on getting back into the Coast Guard, and
speaking of that was your example.
what's that?
We were talking about me being a scrambler, and then you started talking about uh, the sports psychology personality type thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I think just like Scrambling, I think scrambling, people who are scramblers, a lot of times they're people who are willing to take risks. That's what I would say. Like, people who like to scramble in jiu-jitsu are people who are, like I said, this is my psychoanalysis of it, that in jiu-jitsu, if you're willing to, let's say anytime you take on something new, you take on a new endeavor, there's going to be some unknowns that show up. And that's what the scramble is to me, is like you're willing to step into the fire and like let's just see what happens, right? Rather than I a lot of times when I roll, sometimes I love the scramble, so I'm not saying that I don't invite it very frequently. It's I mean, being a wrestler, it's what I started jiu-jitsu with, but I've also become very systematic with my jiu-jitsu at the same time.
Right.
So like, let's just say this, but what I did whenever me and I keep talking about me and Zach Road because I know he's a familiar person to everybody that
highlight of your
so,
trip. Highlight of your
yeah,
trip.
dude, I'm excited. You know, Zach, if you hear this, I hope you feel the same way.
He doesn't
Oh,
listen. He's not that
I
kind
know.
of friend.
I'm just joking.
I
I'm
don't know
just
why
joking.
he doesn't fucking.
I'm just
Well, he
joking,
might, but he's
but
just secretive about it.
yeah,
No,
no,
dude, there's for the record, bro. I'm getting like listeners from like all over the place now.
that's awesome, dude. And
Yeah.
I think it's gonna keep. I think it's gonna keep growing. You seem like you. I mean, all the shows I've listened to, they've been awesome. But walking to me, I didn't try to walk into that role with like a system. I just walked into the fire and just like let's just see what. And I think that's a lot of times in training the best way to go about it. Like let's just walk into a role and let's just start going rather than like grip fighting for 5 minutes to get a sleeve grip.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Fuck
Like,
that shit.
yeah, to me, like there's a time and a place. If I'm trying to work on a particular sweep, I think that's intelligent. I think that's intelligent training to where you're like, all right, I'm trying to get better in this area of my jiu-jitsu. But I
Right.
think my favorite way to train and to really like a lot of times to really grow is like let's just step into the fire and let's just see what happens, and that's fun.
I don't know where my scrambling comes from.
I mean, you started in MMA, so I'd say that's MMA is a lot of a very it's nogi, like nogi is a scrambling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and like I said, it's personality, bro. Like you like to take risks, you like to go for things. It's
Yeah.
it's who you are, bro. You don't got a choice in the matter.
Dude, that used to be like one that like that's one thing I still remember you used to say. Like I remember the day that you were like, to me, this is like one of the biggest put downs is when you tell somebody you can't do anything about it. It's just your personality, dude. Like, remember when you said that? Like,
I don't
you're like,
actually.
you don't remember?
No. I'm saying I don't actually think I believe that. Like
It stuck with me, bro.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I'm a big believer in like the growth mindset type of thing. Like you are. I'd say like you are your habits. Like
But
that's more what it is. But
just imagine telling somebody like, bro, I'm so sorry I did that to you, and it's like you're expecting the person to like accept your apology and come back at you and like hash things out, and you're like, don't be sorry, dude. It's just who you are. It's your personality,
that's
bro.
cool,
There's nothing you
bro.
can do about it.
Did I say that? Did I say that from a sincere apology? Because I don't remember.
You said it too. I know at least one situation where you said it, where you were like frustrated and you're like sick of the shit.
Yeah.
And I thought it was like I remember we were talking about that, and I thought it was great, and it stuck with me ever since. It's like
I said it to somebody. Okay, I was probably just being.
It's like a back pocket, like
dude, it's super mean. Yeah, it's super mean.
It's a dire situation type of hit, is what it is.
You're trying to cut deep. You're trying to like trying to go out. Yeah.
When you're burning that bridge, you know.
Yeah. It's like just burn it down to the ground.
Down to the ground.
See that South Park episode with
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's what I should be like. What's it like being a ginger athlete in the sport? Because you know that.
Oh, dude, I could go on that for a long time.
No, bro, we can't talk about that because we've got a few of them in the gym now.
Yeah, bro.
We can go.
It's a struggle, man. Being a ginger is just, I get sunburnt way more than anybody else on the planet.
You know how much the gi burns when you're sunburnt?
Yeah. If I get sunburnt if I decide to go outside with my shirt off for about 15 minutes, I can't train for a week because of my blistering sunburn. You know, it's just things people don't think about that.
Speaking of risk taking, bro, I've been I know we were talking about a little bit the other day, and you had an idea.
Oh yeah.
But I've been like brainstorming some ideas in a similar jiu-jitsu direction.
Yeah.
I got some cool ones I got to spin off your head or spin, and
Careful saying
maybe this podcast.
careful saying it here, because I bet there's some listeners just trying to get some good ideas.
Yeah, right. I know he's gonna slip. I know he's
Yeah,
gonna slip, bro.
people are listening, trying to get the lowdown on their next $1 million idea.
But back to scrambling. Now that I
Yeah,
think about it, I think the decision that goes in my head, and like it's not really a conscious decision; it's like a subconscious decision. Is I think it's just like trusting in the athletic ability. Like
yeah,
instead of fighting for a fucking sleeve grip for 5 minutes and that being most of the role,
yeah,
like I'm gonna try some slick shit, and if it doesn't work, then I'm just gonna try to like work my way out of it, like
yeah.
as fast as
Yeah,
possible.
that's trust. Like you're trusting your defense.
Correct the
It's
shit.
not yeah, not just even like your athletic ability, trusting your jujitsu, right? Like trusting that like if things go bad, I have the defense to get out of all of this stuff and end up on top. And I think that's, you know, once again, dude, I keep bringing it to this level. I think that's a metaphor for life. That like if like a scramble to me is putting yourself in a difficult situation that you're going to come out on top of. And that's like you purposely walk away from your job to try to start a business, let's say. There's going to be some scrambling involved there, but you trust in your work ethic and in your idea that you're going to come out on top. And even if you get tapped out, that you're still going to keep going. And that's why that's what I'm saying. Like, I love scrambling because it ultimately is what the role is. Like, that's where the role takes place, not the grip. Like, there's obviously the initial exchange. To me, the initial exchange in jiu-jitsu is like trying to grip fight for position. That's important. Then there's okay, top and bottom, but from there, like the scramble, you could look at that as like the exchange of like, oh, he's going for a submission and I'm countering that submission and using that counter to try to pass his guard. And then when I don't pass his guard, I end up backing his guard, but I'm then right away he's trying to sweep me, and I'm trying, like that's what the scramble is, jujitsu, right? And so that's where the role is actually happening. And then it's the finishing points are the submissions or settling, or as like Brazilians say, stabilize. That's what you're stabilizing, that you're no longer scrambling anymore. You've conquered, you've won that scramble, let's say.
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah, exactly what you're saying. I know I keep
Well,
going on rants about it, but
no, you're good, man.
this is stuff that excites me.
Hey, I love it, and that's what's good is you can hear it in your voice. Which is gonna give people, especially people from our gym that listen to this, it's gonna give them a good insight on you, dude. Like,
Yeah.
you'll have people approaching. This is what's really fucking been blowing my mind, and what's cool. I just did this thing on a whim.
Yeah.
On a scramble whim.
Yeah, dude.
See,
You're
look, I'm
scrambling,
psyched.
bro. Look at you. See?
But I knew you'd pick up on that. But
Yeah.
I just did it just for fun, man. I'm like, all right, my time's kind of limited. It's kind of hard to like keep up with a full-time job, training, some side hustles, and family. But like podcasts are pretty cool and easy for me to, I can talk. So
Yeah.
why
Well, dude,
not?
I mean, and it's in a lot of ways, it is a risk, because you're taking a risk on the fact that, like, you're putting yourself out there, essentially. Like, you're putting yourself out there for random people to just listen and judge you. And how many people are not even willing to, like, to even say hello to a random person they want to talk to, whereas you're just like, hey, I'm gonna put who I am out here on a podcast so that people, I think that's pretty awesome. So
Cool, thanks, bro.
it's back to you being a scrambler.
Oh, no. No, I was gonna say it's cool because you'll get people in the gym probably approaching you and talking to you about it. Like they'll be like, "Hey, man, I listened to your podcast. I liked it," and they'll probably ask you questions.
Yeah.
And then like people I've had on, I've already had people reach out and be like, "Hey, hey, talk to that guy again. I want to hear about this," or like, "Hey, you should have that guy back on and bring up like for you." they might be like you should have Donald back on and talk about rescue swimming.
Yeah.
And have him share some stories or like, talk about experiences. And I'll be like, fuck, if that's what the people want to hear, let's throw it on there. So now it's almost like people are almost giving me content ideas.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Sounds like a good feeder into episode 2.
Yeah, right. Stay tuned. What do you we've been talking a lot about jiu-jitsu and growth.
Yeah.
For people who are, because majority of the people listening to this are probably blue belt. Let's just give it white or blue belt.
Yeah.
And you being a black belt.
Yeah.
I've got. What would you tell them? Like, what is your advice to them for their own journey's growth?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the biggest thing I would say is what I see the difference in people who are those really high level guys versus just people who are, not that they're not high level, but there's a difference, is take your jiu-jitsu into your own hands. Study. Like, and I'm not just saying like scroll through your YouTube feed and go down a rabbit hole on X, Y, and Z. That can be beneficial, but dedicate an hour a day, a couple times a week to studying certain positions. Get an instructional if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, there is really good content on YouTube. And being, let's say you're you're somebody in your 30s or 40s, you probably can't train hard 7 days a week, but you can still study jiu-jitsu a couple days a week. And even for the 20 something year olds and the teenagers, let's say, like you should also be studying really hard too. So you're going into your jiu-jitsu. Yes, you're learning the lessons that the instructors are teaching you, but showing up, don't think you're gonna know more than the purple belt or the brown belt that's teaching you because you saw this on YouTube. They still know it on a much deeper level, but you're just getting a different perspective on that same thing that they might be teaching. So then you can eventually develop your own perspective on that position. So I would say that's probably the biggest piece of advice. And what I've seen and what I did for a lot of years is I still do is I like to take my jiu-jitsu into my own hands and don't count on anybody else to get your jiu-jitsu better, because you know what you want to work on. And sometimes it's going to be the technique that an instructor shows you. Let's say it's like a triangle from Spider Guard. You can go down a rabbit hole on that one technique and see how 15 different world champions do the triangle from Spider Guard. And all of a sudden now you actually know that specific technique better than probably 95% of the people in the gym. So kind of a long-winded answer, but that would be it.
I don't think there is a simple answer for that.
No.
I think the podcast is fucking sick. If you're listening to it and you're like, I don't know if I want to listen to the next episode of this podcast, you're probably a bitch ass. You need to listen to the next episode of this podcast and keep listening to it. Because my friends down here are trying to make shit happen. And we're going to make some shit happen.